This is one topic which I don't think we have talked about or spend any time. We talk about investing and how to grow or save, but what basically the money is itself has changed, over the centuries. So I read through a really long article on the history of money. Of course, not going to talk through the whole, but I've created an abridged version. It was a very fascinating read for me, so I thought I will definitely want to share that here, in terms of what's been happening around the concept of money for hundreds of years. When things change really slowly, we just don't notice it. These things take centuries to change, but for me it was a good intellectual read, trying to understand just the basic concept of money itself. So yeah, so that's one thing I want to talk about today. And other thing is a little analysis of a company, which I would say it as a baby Berkshire. Right? We all know Berkshire Hathaway, what they do, and this one kind of you could say not at the same scale, but something if we catch it, early in the game, might turn out to be, good investment on long term. So I don't own shares, so I just wanted to spend some time to look at, what business is this company in, what they do, and all that. So we'll share that, today's session. Anything else? Any other thing on your mind? How Bob said, I've always been curious how people used to travel around without banks. Did they have it? So, Bob, perfect question, and that's, I mean, we will talk about it. Why currencies came into picture? What was money before gold, and gold is not been the only form of money. What was money before gold, and after gold, what happened? It was a fascinating read for me. So yeah, we will talk about it, and now how things could still change. Okay. All right. Not enough crowd today. Looks like everyone is still in vacation mode, which is great. But let's get started. Ether merge. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so let's start, because I didn't have. I generally don't talk about cryptos, but since there's a question on Ether merge, we can talk about it before we get into the regular session. So Ether merge is a highly anticipated event in the crypto community that is expected to happen somewhere around September 15th. Okay, so the September 15th is the exact time will not be known, because the merge will happen when the overall the difficulty level reaches the cumulative difficulty level reaches a certain point. And now that would depend on how many miners are available at that point of a time, etc., etc. So, but the approximate time is around 15 September. Now, going back to the basics of what is this Ether merge is all about, right? So, if you're active on crypto space, there are two major systems that are prevalent in how some of these crypto assets are created. One is called proof of work, in which miners have to really do some work, just like to take gold out of earth. Companies have to spend energy, company has to spend resources, and and after spending those tons of resources, they are able to mine some gold. And that is why gold is valuable, because you just can't create it out of thin air. You cannot create gold at home without spending any resources. You got to do some work. And And that's why gold has held its value, because despite all our advances, we haven't been able to create gold in the lab, right? So that's called proof of work. And assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they are based on that. So the so-called coin miners, they have to run computational, spend computational power to solve a so-called mathematical puzzle. And to solve that against the rest of the miners in the world, they have to spend a lot of computational power, right? And so that's called proof of work. So if you have done the work, you have solved the puzzle, it means you have done the work, and then a new coin, Ethereum or Bitcoin is mined, is awarded to miner as a reward, just the way it happens in the mining of gold, right? Now, there has been a lot of, the other way to mine the coin is called proof of stake. Means if you are, in this not really mining, but technically it's validating. So the job of the miners is to validate the transactions that are coming through, and to validate the, once they validate the transaction, they get rewarded by creation of the coin. That's how Bitcoin miners get their coin. That's how the Bitcoin is generated, same way as Ethereum generated. Now, the other way to get the reward is through proof of stake, in which if you basically have to put some your own financial stake on the table, and then you get a chance to validate the transaction. The idea is that if someone, a miner, deliberately try to game the system, then the whatever the stake that they have put in will be confiscated. In proof of work case, if miner deliberately try to play games, then all the computational work that they have done goes for a waste. So there's a disincentive for them. Now, because you don't have to do computational power, you don't have to do computational work, proof of stake is considered to be, there is no waste of energy. And Ethereum wants to move from proof of work to proof of stake. This project has been around, this has been in progress since 2016 or 2017. It's been long coming. Now, this merge is when the Ethereum two separate main nets will merge. The proof of work will merge with the proof of stake. And after that, there will no longer be mining rewards on Ethereum blockchain. It will completely move towards proof of stake. So that will make it much easy. It will basically consume much lesser electricity, much lesser computational power to validate the transactions and add it to the Ethereum blockchain. Now, the reason why crypto community has been very positive about this is, one of the narratives around the whole crypto assets is it's burning the ocean, burning the earth, it's boiling the ocean because of the computational power that's being used. Now, having Ethereum moving to proof of stake will at least help them in terms of, hey, we are green. Now, a lot of it for the institutional adoption, ESG is becoming big and big factor, and they do, and having the blockchain to moving to a more greener way of mining could help in adoption. That's basically the whole idea behind moving to proof of stake. Number two, I mean, there are other reasons why they're moving to proof of stake, is to make it much faster, but that's not going to happen after merge. There are a lot more other developments need to happen, which is around sharding and moving towards Merkle tree from Merkle tree. So there are a lot of other phases which are yet to be done, but the first step in that was to move from proof of work to proof of stake, and that's where this Ether merge would be, and that's anticipated on September 15th. The other point was there were thousands of Ethereum that were staked in the Ethereum blockchain, while this merge stuff was happening, and those will start to becoming unblocked. So there could be more supply coming in. So that is why it's an anticipated event. There could be a lot more volatility on Ethereum around that. How much is already being priced in? Only God would know. But that's all. I mean, that's a quick summary on what's on Ethereum merge. All right. Let's jump onto the stock side. Quick summary on Friday seems to be a great, I mean, this week turned out to be a good week from a stock side. Looks like Wall Street got back to its winning mode after 3 weeks of continuous losses. Eventually, we saw markets ended green. I don't know the reason. Pundits do say that maybe, participants think that the market has reached its temporary bottom, but there were some signs of maybe inflation is bottoming out. And one thing that we know is if inflation will start to come down, Fed will start to, take a little more, less hawkish stance on the interest rates. So that's what we saw. Is it going to be another, sucker rally? Who knows? We saw one rally from July to August, where the markets went up. S&P was up more than 20%, and then it fell down again. And we thought maybe it was a bear rally. Now, is this whatever weekly rally we have seen this week? Is it going to be bear rally? Too soon to tell anything. But I think there are indications around inflation easing, and that may be a reason that investors are ready to move back to risk on assets. So I didn't realize, but looks like there's something called Fed's Beach Book, which gets economic reports from all their 12 branches. All their each of their branches, and looks like the price increases were moderating in 12 of their districts. So if price increases, continue to stay a little lower or moderate, that's going to be good for overall. I mean, eventually that may leave Fed to reduce their rates, and who knows that they eventually may pivot. But we have yet to see. Labor market was also strong, which is good. On one side, we are talking about, hey, are we heading into recession? On the other side, if labor market continues to stay strong, that will be good from, generally on a recession will also preceded by job losses. But if labor market continue to stay strong, we may not get into a bad recession. Yield perspective on the macro side, yield did increase because ECB increased their loans, and I think there are a lot of more corporate bonds that came onto the market. So if you want to increase the supply of bonds, we got to increase the yield to make it more attractive for bond buyers. But net, I think from macro side, nothing much has changed. Only surprise on the Europe side, the energy situation is really bad. But on the US side, I think the oil prices have been declining. It's what, for more than 2 months now we are seeing consistent decline in oil prices, gas prices. So eventually all that should trickle down to have an effect on CPI itself. I'll have some charts that I'll share, which talks more about the futures, look at the futures and what the participants are expecting in terms of CPI in future. And it does seems to be trending down. If that's the case, maybe, the markets will get back onto its upward trajectory. Now, when exactly that will happen, no one knows, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I mean, being in the market, of course, doing a little bit of a hedging, but I'm taking my hedges off to increase delta on the portfolio. From a sector perspective, all were green. Of course, the consumer discretionary was held by a lot of, Tesla did well this week. If you're in Tesla, congratulations. I don't own Tesla, but overall, it was a good week for the markets. I don't know. You guys did anything specific this week on the markets? Any change in behavior? Any moving money in or staying out?
Oh, sorry, Vivek. This might be out of the realm, but some Singapore leadership. Oh, I think the grandkids of the first Singapore leader. I think they're investing in crypto. I think I sent you the headline or something like that. Do you want to make any comments on that?
No, one of the Singapore bank, which is called DBS, they have been very, I don't know if that was the one, I didn't get a chance to read that, but that bank has been very, proponent on the crypto even 2 years ago. I don't know if that's the bank, but I know one Singapore bank, they actually also moving into crypto asset custody. So that's kind of an old one. They started working on it 2 years ago. So maybe now they are in a position to do assets of basically do the custody.
So that brings a lot of credibility to crypto, even though whatever they're
saying. But it's all I'm saying, it's nothing new. There are many US banks that have already geared up for providing a custody solutions, right? So they want to be ready in case the institutional money comes in. Now, whether the institutional money will come in, that depends a lot on the broader macro side, and that is where no one knows about it. But Singapore DBS Bank is just one of them. There are many. The biggest custody provider is BNY Mellon, and they already got ready for custodying crypto assets a few months ago. Majority of the big institutions, bank like Fidelity Asset Management, they all are already providing asset services. But yes, in Singapore, DBS is a big name, and I think that's why it was in news. Jay says, I made 5% S&P bullish positions past 14 days, selling put premium. That's good. Yeah, so for me, I use mostly S&P for my hedging. So I did close some of my SPX hedging trades earlier. I closed one on NDX, but I also had some little bit of an SPY short calls. Now on Friday, those short calls are just at the money. So I'll see. But I think I have enough deltas on the portfolio. If market continues to rise, it will be good for the overall portfolio. In that case, I can just close the hedges for loss. But I'll see. Sometimes it feels to be too much too soon, and we don't know when the markets could turn around. But so far so good. NDX is daily. I know it is like multiple times in a week, but I don't do on the daily side. Well, let's see. Come on. Oh yeah, it indeed is. Yes, it is. Wow. People can't get enough of doing weeklies. Now you're right. We've got a daily ones. Yeah, the bid-ask spread on NDX is wider. I find SPX has got a better bid-ask spread. QQQ has got better bid-ask spread. But yeah, NDX is on daily. Yeah, I never turn on daily either. I pick on monthly. I think I have one position which is for 21st October. That's the only one which is remaining on NDX. I took off a couple of them this week for profit on, I think, Wednesday, Thursday, and on Friday it rallied. Anyway, so yeah, so far so good on the markets. But yeah, I want to start today's session with this quote: is money is not the most important thing in our life, but our last breath is. The reason I wanted to start this was the week started with a very, I mean, little bad note, or really a sad news. The CFO of Bed Bath and Beyond, he basically took his own life, and which was really got me thinking. I mean, like, just he's a CFO of a company, and doesn't matter how bad the company may be on it, at least it's a company is a separate from you. So, but it was really sad news. Despite all what's happening on Bed Bath and Beyond, it has become a meme stock, and I mean, you have no control on what the stock would do and could do in the markets when you have a different type of a players that are basically playing in this market. And if you really look at it, caught some massive rallies from $5 all the way to $20-$30 back down. Business is bad. Yeah, but still nothing in life when it comes to money should push anyone to take such extreme steps. That the
Didn't he do something? Some financial.
I mean, there are some rumors around that
illegality?
there were some pump and dump allegations of pump and dump on a BBY stock, but it's okay. I mean, that's a cost of doing business. Is anytime the stock fall like this, there will be lawsuits coming to your, will be filed against the company. Why only Bed Bath and Beyond? I mean, I remember in my previous company, when the stock falls, let's say 20%, after announcing results, suddenly we'll see a lot of these law firms filing a suit. Right? Most of them, 99% of them, or more than 99% of them, are just baseless. There are law firms whose job is just to file a class action lawsuit and then see if anyone wants to join it. I mean, and as an employees, those who generally don't look at the markets, then when they suddenly see, okay, some law firm is suing us, they will have a question on all hands. And it's like, it's a cost of doing business. Just ignore it. Right?
Vivek,
Unless he was doing something really nefarious. In any case, I think life is way more precious than any amount of money that anyone has got. So,
did you watch Wall Street 1?
Wall
With
Street?
Michael Douglas? Yeah.
No. Which one, Wall Street?
Yeah, that was like in 1984 or something. Were you born? But anyways, and then the second Wall Street, which really
Oh,
sucked.
so the movie, the Wolf. I've seen both, the Wolf of Wall Street, the earlier one with the
No, not Wolf
Mike.
of Wall Street. They're both Michael Douglas movies,
Ma-
and the difference between the financial scam in the second one, it was totally illegal for the first one, the inside information and all that. So I suspect that he did something a pump and dump was very illegal in the 1980s. A pump and dump nowadays is not really illegal.
I mean, so it is still, so you can pump and dump provided you don't have any insider information. So the illegality is if you have an information edge, if you are privy to some information which is not public and you're trading based on that, that's illegal. If I am sitting at home and I am trading and trying to pump the stocks, let's say I buy the stocks and come and talk about it, or tweet about it to millions of the followers, and then when they follow and I dump my stocks, it's not illegal. It may be immoral, but it's not illegal. I didn't have any insider information. I'm just coming and talking about what I bought. And if millions of people follow me, good or bad for them, it's not illegal. But if you are trading on an information which is not public, that becomes illegal. So yeah, so there are questions around Ryan Cohen. When he came, he joined, he took stake in Bed Bath and Beyond. People thought when he joined GameStop, he had some grandiose idea of transforming GameStop. Reddit crowd followed him on GameStop. They followed him on Bed Bath and Beyond, right? But remember, he was offered board of directors seat, Ryan Cohen, but he declined. Maybe this was his plan all the way from day one, so that he cannot be accused of having insider information, because he was not part of a board of directors. Even though he was one of the biggest stakeholder, he declined board of directors seat and he got out. I would say he was a smart, cunning investor who took advantage of the situation. Just like AMC CEO is not doing it. What AMC CEO doing is not illegal. It may be immoral that they're trying to dump monkey money on gullible investors who are pumping up AMC stock. So he created a new kind of share class from out of thin air called ape shares, some preferred shares, and a lot of retail investors bought into it, right?
Vivek, when I was in undergrad, which was in the late 80s, we were learning that publishers of business magazines, people who this guy was a small peon in the I guess Business Week or Wall Street Journal, so they would know, or Forbes or something like that. He would know something like maybe a couple days before the rest of the public, because he was publishing the magazine, and they would get arrested for trading on insider information.
Yeah, if you trade on that becomes a problematic, and that is why most of these CNBC anchors, etc., they don't trade on individual stocks. They only trade on they basically hold mutual funds. Having insider information is not a crime. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding, having insider information is not a crime. Trading based on that and profiting from that is illegal. So, but Ryan Cohen did not have any insider information. Yeah, but he dumped his shares. Dumping shares is not a crime. So we gotta be, and now AMC is doing the same stuff. I mean, he'll do ask, well, what do you think of AMC CEO? I'm like, he's smart. He's taking it. At the end of the day, as a CEO, his responsibility is to increase the shareholder value by legal means. Now, that could be an immoral means. That's okay. Unethical means, okay, but those are not illegal means, right? Creating ape coin shares and dumping onto retail investors is not illegal. It may be immoral though, but he did that stuff. I mean, I admire him to take completely, I mean, otherwise AMC will just die down. They have no oxygen left. So he's trying to do whatever possible to keep the money.
Oh, Vivek, are you proud that that Starbucks news CEO or CEO in 6 months will be Indian?
So I don't know if, I mean, he is Indian origin. I don't know if he's still Indian citizen, but in any case, I think he has his credentials, and from a record banker, he transformed that company, and I think that's why they're hiring him. Let's see what he does. But I do see some memes coming along saying now Starbucks will start selling, samosas and the charts in Starbucks. Those memes I receive a lot of from my Indian friends. But we'll see. I mean, his work has to speak, but let's say what Lakshman has to do. But one thing is for sure, I was listening on CNBC and on some podcast, every anchor had a difficult time in pronouncing, getting the right pronunciation with it for his first as well as the last name. I think last name was really tricky. So, but let's see what job he does. His job has to speak for himself, not his not his ethnicity. And I don't invest based on the ethnicity of CEO anyway.
Well, what I'm trying to say is, Vivek, I mean, Google is controlled by
Yeah, I mean, there are, if you
Microsoft
look at it,
and
there
Amazon.
are,
These are the big three.
yeah, that is true. Many of the, and that's again because, hey, they were first on the tech sector. They have shown their worth, and now they're doing good. So yeah, as a Indian origin, it does makes us feel proud about it, that some of the folks have done, really changing the world. Anyway, so let's continue. Some interesting charts, which might be so based on what happened in last, not this week, but the prior week. We see a lot of institutions have bought record amount of hedges. So now the last week panic hedging was 3 times more than the extreme stuff that happened in 2008. Right? And now if the market turns around, it's going to recoil like a spring. Right? All these hedges have to be unwound. Again, when everyone is on the one side of the boat, it makes sense to take the other side. When everyone is all gung-ho and bullish about the markets, it makes sense to tone down our own expectations. But the reverse side is when everything is falling apart, maybe it's a time to look at the different, take the other side. So we saw this panic hedging, a lot of insurance or hedging from institutional side, and retails doing in S&P E-mini futures. They were record short on S&P E-mini futures. Right? So when there is both institution retailers becomes too negative, and if we get any one good hint of positive news in the markets, that's where we start to see some short covering, which leads to sudden terms are like say short squeeze, etc. I'm not saying when it will happen, how much will it happen, but it does it's important to pay some attention to these things of around when there is extreme bearishness, things could suddenly change into a reverse direction with much greater velocity than we might expect. Other interesting chart that I saw was around the difference between the ISM manufacturing prices paid, which is PPI, producers price index, and then there is a CPI, which is consumer price index. So I consider PPI as a little leading indicator, because if the producers, if the manufacturers, if their cost of manufacturing the goods is going higher, they would be able to pass it on to consumers, and the consumers' inflation will go higher. Now looking at, if we look at the CPI, which is on the black, it's been rising, and now the PPI for the last 3 months is now slowly coming down. So December 22 estimates its CPI to continue to fall. This gap keeps on widening. That means this eventually the gap need to be covered, right? If the producers inflation doesn't increase, then the CPI can't stay up for long, right? Irrespective of whatever Fed is saying, let's be aware that if inflation starts to tone down, there is no reason for Fed to continue to have this extreme hawkish stance, which what they are currently having. So it does make me hopeful about the future, that maybe we have seen the bottom. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but looking at the future and the expectation of inflation does give some insight into what we may be seeing in, let's say, next 6 to 12 months. So yeah, so I'm not, like I said, I am reducing my hedges. I still have a lot of positive delta, but now it's a time maybe start to take some of these hedges off and increase the overall delta in the portfolio. Okay, okay, now we're talking about prof from Indian origins. Other stuff which is not happening good on the markets around what we are seeing in Europe. I think it was start of the week, and this is where you start to have these energy wars, right? Earlier, so we had seen military wars, we are seeing financial wars, now we are seeing energy war. G7 countries try to put a price cap on the energy that they are importing from Russia. And Russia just shut down the whole Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That's it, 0%. I mean, they completely shut it down as I would say it was a retaliatory measure, though obviously Russia would say, hey, we have to shut it down because the West has put sanctions, so we can't get the parts that we need to maintain that line, and hence we have to shut it down. But the move just came in after G7 and imposed a price cap. So it's just not coincident. I think that's Putin also understands now. I think both of the sides are trying to figure out who can survive for how long, whether Europe will cave in and remove sanctions if they need energy, or whether they can how long can they continue to have their citizens suffer because of the energy prices. And right now, I think gas prices are up 3x. If you are paying £100, now you're actually budgeting £400, £350 for gas in UK. Rest of Europe, I mean, it's still really, really bad. So we'll see. And other news was governments across Europe, they are now starting to bail out utility companies because the cost of energy has gone so high. And now to bail out utility companies, governments will again have to so-called print money. And that means inflation will continue to raise its head. And third thing that I saw was they want to ban energy trading. So a lot of mess and crisis in Europe. I don't know. When we'll see an end to this. Either Russia has to back down, or EU plus US have to come to a consensus and maybe figure out how to give some relaxations to Russia so that they can then continue to gain some energy. Or the worst part, which is right now happening, is a lot of countries in Europe are now starting their coal-fired plants to get to generate power, which is really, really bad from an energy perspective. But I think this is a lesson that hopefully a lot of other countries in the world would learn, is before pivoting to renewable sources, and make sure we have enough capacity coming from, enough power coming from renewable sources before we shut down the fossil fuel sources. Unfortunately, I don't know whatever was going on, but Germany and a lot of other countries thought they could depend on Russia forever for 100% of their energy needs. And now I guess they are feeling the impact of it. So on the UX side, I think oil, like I said, oil prices crude has come down. So but natural gas is still crazy. So if you look at crude oil, has been on downtrend for last almost 2.5 months. That also bodes well for future inflation. A quick look at some of the companies that made some headlines. Zscaler. I mean, we talked about, I think it was last week, right? The cyber security companies, despite all the cost cutting happening in the IT budgets, Cybersecurity companies continue to post some good results. We saw that on a CrowdStrike. We saw on Sentinel-1 last week. It was Zscaler, and the share, of course, responded very positively. It was up 20%. Now, this is a company that is growing at, so that's almost $1 billion of run rate, and growing at 30-40%. Right? There are not many companies in that league where you have a $1 billion run rate still growing at 30-40% rate. So of course, market responded positively on Zscaler. Other one is around DocuSign. So DocuSign have had really, really tough time. From the highs of close to 300, some point it was down to 50. They had also change in the CEO. They're still running on an interim CEO, but I think we saw some change in the business. I wouldn't say the business has completely changed yet. It's just that the expectations were so low that whatever results that DocuSign came up with was good when it compared to expectations, right? If you look in isolation and on absolute numbers, not that great, but market is all about expectations, right? So we saw a little bump in DocuSign after earnings announcement. I'm still bullish on DocuSign because I can't imagine a world wherein we go back to just paper signing. So I'm overall big on this industry. Whether DocuSign can compete with Adobe on a higher end and a lot of other smaller players, that remains to be seen, right? And number two is how quickly they are able to grow the additional sources of revenue and their agreement cloud, their notary business. That will tell whether this company will survive for long or not. But for now, I'll give them some more time and time to perform and see where they land. So that's on DocuSign. We also saw some more bump on the Lyft. Lyft was in the news, and that news actually lifted Lyft shares. I don't know, I think it was up 15-20%. I don't own Lyft. So yeah, so this was around $14 to almost $7, so $3 jump, almost 20% jump. So I think the rumor was that GM may be buying Lyft. GM already hold I think a stake. They already have a stake in Lyft. So maybe there's rumor that it could completely be acquired by GM. I don't know if GM, did they deny it or did they respond? Let me just see. No, I think that was the only news. All of these changes were options related for now. I didn't understand, SP. Could you clarify what do you mean? I mean, is the GM converted their optionals into stock? Did they have a convertible options? Was it related to that? Okay, and then option expiration related. Okay. The other thing was around GameStop, Bed Bath and Beyond. These meme stocks will continue to do what they do. I kind of start paying attention, but it looks like market still does pay attention and media continues to report it. I think after this whole January 2021 was the peak of whole meme mania. Now, I think once in a while we'll see these meme mania moving into one or the other stock. AMC has been we don't see that much on AMC anymore. Um, GME at some point was like $400. Yeah, once in a while we'll see these jumps, but I don't think any substantial business changes have yet happened. I know GameStop is moving into NFT space. They recently had some tie-up. I can't recall with whom, but I don't. I mean, these are the things. It's good for some adrenaline rush. Good to see some action, but from an investment perspective, nothing more on that. Tesla. Tesla also had some good day. Looks like they are building a lithium factory, and that served as a positive news. Lastly, I was watching was NIO, because NIO announced their earnings, and I've been holding NIO for a few years. They lost money in this quarter, which was way more than was expected, but that was because of the COVID shutdowns at their NIO's supplier side, and then they raised the cost. So overall, there was a cost pressure, but the good thing was the deliveries were beyond more than what market was expecting, as well as what company had guided. So and this has been a good vehicle, pun intended, for options, for me. One of, if I were to pick up around selling options and why I like selling options, NIO is my perfect example on that one. Because over the years, it's I mean, I enjoy NIO as a free and clear, and I think my recent one is now cost basis is negative. Hold on, this is the recent one is negative 13.45. So pretty. I mean, I don't have to worry about it. So I always love to look at NIO, but I don't think I'm gonna sell my shares. Just continues to reduce the cost basis. Maybe if acquire more if it goes down. That's all around some companies. Any other stocks you guys watching or caught your eyes in the market? Made some more news. Oh, okay. Phase Energy and Restoration Hardware. So I think RH. How was RH results? Restoration Hardware earnings. Are consumer back to okay? I mean, from the market perspective, I think yeah, it was up around 4.5%. But any specific news around Restoration Hardware? ZIM has a huge dividend, but shipping rates going down, so stock is diving. Which one is ZIM? This is a shipping service company. Yeah, and I think with the ocean shipping. So clearly, with shipping rates coming down and with the market opening up, great for inflation, not good for shipping companies. Some of the shipping companies had enjoyed unprecedented power during COVID, right? From where the container shipping rates from Los Angeles to Shanghai or Shenzhen port used to be $6,000. It went all the way to 20K. Like they were up 3 times, 4 times. Of course, with life returning to normal, I think that it will be challenging to have the same pricing power. But it does say what's its dividend yield? 15. So these are the cases wherein some of these yield become these eye-popping yield. become really, risky, because the bigger question is the business even strong enough to even retain this yield going forward? So if you're getting into this to buy from a dividend perspective, I think to me it looks like to be very risky from a dividend play perspective. How good is the business? Can they even retain this dividend pay yield? I don't think so. All right. What else? Yeah. No, like I said, I wanted to talk about money, the concept of money, and I think there was also a question on the gold, etc. So we will go through that. In the final, we'll jump on to baby Berkshire Hathaway, right? Before that, let me sip some coffee. This is going to be a little longer article. We're going to walk through the history of money. I know this is not a regular topic, but I was really fascinated to know the whole concept of money. I mean, it's like if you're a fish in the water, I mean, you don't see the water if you're a fish, because that's how we've always been. So it was a good read to understand the whole history of money and how it has changed. So I thought I do want to talk about it. If you feel a little boring, raise your hands. But I do want to at least go through how this seemingly simple topic of money could be so complicated. Such as Ascent of Money by Neil Ferguson, a fantastic book, and the documentary, great. So I'll take note of that. Thanks, Sachin. Yeah. All right, so let's jump on to what is money anyway, right? Even though we spend our lives seeking so-called money, but money has changed significantly over centuries. Gold, from stones, from beads, to salt used to be money. Then we had paper, coins, silver used to be money. So it keeps on changing the form. What do we call money, and what do we use for? There are 4 basic uses, right? Consume means I need to meet my immediate needs: food, shelter, clothing, 3 basic needs. Then save. I want to save something into something money, so that I can convert it for my consumption purpose later on, right? This is like my bank savings account. It has to be safe, it has to be liquid, and it has to be portable, right? So that if I move, I can get my savings to whichever, I can take my savings to the other place, and then I can, convert it and for my consumption purpose. Third purpose of money is invest, which is not really for near future, but this is for later, right? But this also comes with a risk. I think I don't have to talk more about it. That's where we'll all meet here. Stock can go down to 0. And finally is share, is wherein give to charity or to other people in community. These are 4 purposes. Most of the people in the world stay on the consumption side. That's how we all start. That's our basic step in Maslow hierarchy, where we actually have our first interaction with money. I need to buy something to eat, and that's where I need money. And then, okay, to get this money, I need to work. Very few people, then few people start to save. Most of the people don't invest, and philanthropy is even rarer. Like very few people are fortunate enough that they have been able to meet all their previous needs and now are able to contribute to the society or to the community through their philanthropy measures. Majority of the people don't invest in financial assets. I think we know that. So we know all these uses of money, but what we don't know and what we're not accustomed to discussion is the quality of the money itself, or which type of money do we want to hold. And that's a topic. When I was reading through this, I'm like, what do you even mean by what type of money do we want to hold? Right? For me, what type of money is dollar? Right? So that's essentially is in developed countries, people just hold the currency of that country for my saving purposes. In developing country, people have a little different concept. Right? They may, because their own currency is extremely volatile, can be devalued. They think something else as a money. Right? It could be gold. It could be other foreign currency. In Venezuela, dollar is money. Venezuela currency, Bolivar, is not money. Right? Which is different than what we think in US. The world has gone through these three phases of money. JSA, which website did you get this report from? Let me tell you, I follow this very young and dynamic economist called Lynn Alden. She runs her website, and she does write sometimes really long articles, right? This article was around, I think, 60, 70 pages, 40, 50,000 words long. So I kind of remove a lot of stuff from there. Otherwise, it will take us 3-4 hours. So I use my long weekend to go through and understand the whole history of money through Lynn Alden. So you can Google for Lynn Alden website. She is, I really enjoy reading her long articles on different concepts, right? She wrote on energy crisis, exactly what we are witnessing now, just that I didn't follow her in terms of my investing. The way, I mean, she wrote exactly the same way of the energy crisis and why the rest of the world is not building enough energy sources. And that was like last year. And this year we saw after Russia did, everyone is talking about the same thing. Right? Not that Lynn has a crystal ball, but I do enjoy reading her articles. So the world has gone through three phases of money. One is commodity money. Then the gold standard, which in many parts of the world, it is still considered money. And then third one is the fiat currency, which is most of us, my generation, known as money. My parents and my grandparents' generation knows gold as money. And the new generation is now looking at the fourth type of money, which is called digital money or these crypto assets, right? So let's deep dive into these different type of money and commodity money. Right? Let me quickly go through the gist of this. So why do we need money? Because if you are in a smaller group, we don't need anything money. If I want something from you, you want something from me, we can exchange it. I trust a group of friends, and we do exchange some of the stuff without exchanging money. But if the group becomes a little bigger, that number is called Dunbar number. You need something of a value that you can exchange with other people, so that instead of, then the barter system really doesn't work, right? Before money was there, the barter system was the only way for consumers to get what they wanted across the world. If I'm a apple farmer and I want some tools, I give my apple to blacksmith. If I want a meat, I'll give apple to cattle rancher. But as the market starts, the society started to become bigger and bigger, and also as our needs started to get bigger and bigger, it becomes really difficult to find the right people who need the things that I produce, and they have the things that I need. So there was a need for, let's find something else which everyone will need, and then we can use that as a medium of exchange and buy the things that I need in exchange for that. So, and also then you can exchange the value with the people that you don't know, right? I don't have to really trust you. If you give me something that I value as a money, then I don't really need to trust you. I'll just hold that stuff. Other ways, money should also be divisible, portable, durable, fungible, verifiable, and scarce. Right? Otherwise, it's not money. If If it's not divisible, then I can't do many transactions with it. Not portable, I can't take it along with me. Not durable, then money today, it could disappear after 6 months. It has to be fungible so that I don't have to worry about, if I got some money, I can give it to another person. They don't have to worry about it. It's all is fungible. You can exchange one note for another, verifiable, and of course scarce. If it is available in plenty, then there is no value in it. From a government perspective, other definition is money that extinguishes debt. Right? If I'm in debt and I have something of value that I can give to extinguish my debt, that constitute also as money. Surprisingly, JP Morgan testified before Congress in 1912 that gold is money, everything else is credit. Now, this is a concept which is a little difficult to understand, mostly for us who are in developed countries. Currency is not money, but it's a liability of an institution. Most of the time, we basically consider currency and money as same, but these are actually two different things. When you start to get to the, what to call, right? The first principle thinking is money is different than currency, though in developed world, we don't make that distinction. Currency is a liability of an institution. It doesn't have any value of its own. And in 2022, and I think we will read about that later, but it was after, I think, 60, 70 years, first time in 2022, the world really realized that currency is not the money. Currency have no value. It is the liability of another institution. It will hold its value as long as that other institution is willing to, stay true to its words, or will own that liability. If the other party says, I don't consider liability, and do what you want to do, then currency is not a money. In contrast to currency, so today our dollar is a liability on Federal Reserve. Our deposits on our bank are liability on the bank. So if you open up the bank balance sheet, the customer deposits appear on the liability side. Customer loans appear on the asset side. Right? But if bank says, I don't care, I'll declare, I declare bankruptcy, I don't care anything about, about all the liabilities that I have, there's nothing much, then that suddenly that currency has become zero value. In contrast, money can be liquid, fungible. That is not a liability. It has something intrinsic value. Right? Its value is not because a bank or any third party say its value. Its value is because we as a participants in the economy, we as a consumer across the world, we provide value to it. And not we don't need a stamp of a bank to say it's a value. And for many years, money was this money, which is gold, was held in bank as a reserve asset to support that currency. So what commodities can serve as money? Then the article gets into stock to flow ratio, which basically tells it has to be a sweet point of it. You should have enough of it so that many more people can own it. If it is only, it could be very scarce, precious, but if there is not enough of it, then it can't be a medium of, not many people will be able to put value on it, and you can't use it for your purposes, either to store as a wealth or to transact, right? There are many paintings, pieces of art, which are much more valuable, but there are not enough of it. So that's called a stock. It means how much of it is already existing. The second portion is flow. How much can you actually create? And the ratio of that determines how scarce that commodity is to be serve as a purpose of money. Now, over centuries, we've been knowing gold for centuries, over centuries, despite all the technological advancements, we haven't been able to change the stock to flow ratio of gold, which means the amount of gold that got produced every year is between 1 to 2% of the gold that is already existing in the world. And that's been consistent over since more than a century. Right? And we all know machinery, equipment, technology has advanced a lot over the last 100 years, but still we haven't been able to increase the growth of a gold as compared to how much gold already exists. So that stock to flow ratio of gold has been 67 on an average. Whereas there are other more precious metals like platinum, rhodium, but there are not enough of them. So the flow is led, but the stock is even way lesser. So that doesn't serve as purpose of money. But across all other commodities, gold has been able to serve that. Over the centuries, we had stones, beads, feathers, shells, salt, fur, fabric, sugar, coconut, livestock, copper, silver, gold. All of them have served purpose of money across different civilizations. But over that, gold turned out to be the best. And I think as of now, it still has survived, whereas none of the other were able to survive. And we know actually it's a nice stones. And I think I have an example of stone and the beads of how they were not able to survive as a definition of something that could hold its value. All right, I'll come back to silver a little later. So example of stone. There used to be an island called Yap, and they used to consider these big stones as something which is valuable. And it used to be valuable for them. These are called Rai Stones, and those stones were made of a very specific type of a limestone, which didn't exist in this particular island. To get that limestone, you need to take a boat, drive 250 miles out to the sea, go to another place, quarry that limestone, bring it back to your island, and then create these stones. So a lot of work has gone into mining of these stones. Even though now we think what the crap, the stone has a value, but it had a lot of value. And if the merchant used to transact, they didn't transport the stones. They will just tell each other that stone A belongs to merchant A, B belongs to merchant B. And if you are exchanging goods, you would just tell other, okay, now that stone belongs to someone else. Because the stone had value for them, this system worked perfectly for them. So this was one of the earliest part of a oral ledger system. I mean, that's what the ledger is, which is your accounting, where we put down on the ledger who owns what. And this served as a value, and it used to be maintained by oral ledger system. Worked so far until Europeans found this out, right? Irishman David O'Keefe, of course, they had a better technology. They went to the other island and were easily able to quarry all the stone, bring it to this Yap Island, and basically gave the stones and got goods or labor services from the inhabitants of this Yap Island, right? But you can fool the people only for so long. Suddenly people realize that things that were valuable, someone else is producing at will. They can produce a lot of it. Suddenly we saw the flow of it starts to increase by a lot as compared to the stock which they have in Ireland, and it's lost its value as money. It took them many years, but people realize that, oh, you can't fool us by creating these stones in a large number, and people stopped putting any value to the stones. So it died. The other one is on African beads, right? trade beads were used in part of West Africa as money for centuries. So there was a quote from Ibn Battuta, the famous traveler of 14th century, saying a traveler in this country carried no provisions, whether plain food, seasoning, and neither no gold, no silver. He takes nothing but pieces of salt and grass ornaments, which people call beads. And those were considered as money. West Africa, given the technology they had, it was very difficult to make that money. As we say, it's counterfeit money. So for them, making a bead of a glass bead was very difficult. Can't make it more. So you can't just increase the flow of that money, and the beads were treated as a money because it was hard to produce with their level of sophistication that they had. What happened? Europeans came, that a glass making technology. It could produce beautiful beads with modest efforts. And then they trade tons of these beads for commodities. So what? You could only fool for so long. 20 years, 30 years, after, and a lot more details are there, which I've haven't mentioned in here. They pivoted to a specific color of beads. Oh, you can't produce purple beads. So African, they have started to assign more value to the purple beads. Maybe with the 50 purple beads, you can buy a sheep. But if you're bringing a clear bead, you need to pay 1,000 or 500 beads. The European figured out how to make purple beads. Right? Slowly, everything just came down to crash, and they realized that if you can increase the supply with limited effort, and you can pump in a lot of beads, then it will no longer stay as valuable. That again died as a money. Same concept, stock to flow ratio increased exponentially, and it just died on. Third type of money, which was like invasion money, wherein a country will force you to use their worthless paper currencies. Japan did on Chinese citizens. When they occupied China, they confiscated all the valuable goods that China had and told them use this paper currency which Japan had with no backing, and they lost all those paper currencies lost all the value. But they were able to force them because through force of military. Other commodity monies, like I said, there were livestock, right? In nomadic culture, sheep was money. Russians had a history of using fur as monetary good. Seashells were used different region as money. Africa used fine fabric. And this is not even, and this was very funny. In Italy, the Italian bank actually uses high quality Parmesan cheese as a valuable money. So if you want to get a loan from that bank, you can actually card in a huge amount of cheese because they still consider this as a good valuable collateral. And there was a Bloomberg news quoted, they got 17,000 tons of Parmesan cheese. Eventually, I think money is what the society collectively come together and say, and put value on that. And of course, it needs to have all other characteristics of money. It needs to be scarce, durable, etc., etc. If it has to be high quality Parmesan cheese, otherwise bank won't accord any value to it. So that was the phase one of commodity money, wherein we had livestock, we had beads, we had sheep, we had fabric, anything. Right. Next phase came in gold. Right. After thousands of years, two commodities beat all of them, which one was gold and silver. Everything else you could produce more, or maybe they were not durable, or maybe they were not easy to transport. They were not divisible. Of course, livestock is not divisible. If you want something which is less than worth a sheep, what do you do? So, but eventually gold and silver were the one who won that battle out, because you can't produce it at will. You can divide it to some extent, carry it around to some extent, and that extent was good enough till 1400, 1500, 1700s, maybe 1800s. We can't reduce the stock to flow ratio by any meaningful degree. That's what we've been saying even for the last 100 years. We haven't been able to do that. Right? So 19th century, new use cases started to appear, right? Once we started to get advancement in our transportation mode, people started to travel far and wide. That's where there were more concerns of how do I carry big amount of gold with me? Right? The advancements in telecommunication services and custody services led to the abstraction of gold. When I say abstraction of gold, means people still think gold is valuable, but you can't carry it. So you can deposit it to me and I'll give you in writing that you are holding, say, 100 grams of gold. Now you can take that paper and give it to anyone else saying, see, I hold 100 grams of gold. There is a certified paper I have which hold 100 grams of gold. And that certified paper itself become valuable to someone else because it's like, yeah, I can go to that bank and get the gold. So that's where the gold abstraction started to come in, because people wanted to travel far and wide, and it is not easy to carry huge amount of a gold. And they started to, instead, they started to carry these paper claims. That's why it said that the first bank in the world were goldsmiths in Netherlands, because people used to deposit their gold with those goldsmiths. They'll give them a paper receipt saying, yes, you are indeed an owner of that gold. And that paper was then traded in international markets. Like today we trade paper currency, right? So now banks or goldsmiths, dishonest goldsmiths, knew that not everyone will come back and redeem their gold, right? So you deposit gold, I deposit gold, 10,000 other people gave the gold to the bank, to the goldsmith or to the bank. And I'm saying, I am going on my world tour. I can't carry the gold around with me. You give me a paper receipt, which then I can use to buy stuff. And when I'm done with my trip, I'll come back, I'll give you the receipt, I'll take my gold back, because receipt is only valuable if you honor that receipt, right? Gold is valuable. Banks realize that not all 10,000 people will come at the same time. So bank held 1,000 kgs of gold, but they started to issue a lot more paper claims against it, right? And they issued, let's say, 2,000 paper claims. They issued claims to 2,000 kgs of gold. That's what we call in today's term as a fractional banking system, fractional reserve banking, that you issue more claims against the assets what you hold in your banking system. But this is pretty old, hundreds of years old system. It's just that we are seeing it in a new way. So the banking system then got consolidated into central banking, and then the nationwide slips of paper, all countries starting to issue these slips of paper. We still say that, hey, I'm holding so much gold in my vault, and hence I'm issuing this as a paper against a claim on that gold, and that is why this paper is valuable. That's how many central currency banks in the world still hold gold in their vault. And countries whose currency they don't manage, whose are currencies like, and I recall when I was in India, it was a case of 1990s. India was going through a financial, the reopening of their industrial sector. The foreign reserves had dipped down to a really scary level. And at that point of a time, I mean, India couldn't print money because rest of the world wouldn't consider the new Indian rupee as having any value, because you just can't print out of thin air. So India had to ship a gold in a shipment to Bank of England as a proof that yes, we do hold gold, and hence we are creating more money as a claim against that gold. And in news media, I was in school at that time. And in news media, it was a huge, big news from a political perspective that look what the government has done. They had to basically mortgage our gold to a foreign country, or the government has ruined our economy and all that stuff. I didn't understand any of that at that time, but now I was able to understand why India had to ship a gold so that they can, then if they create, more rupee, the rupee will still hold the value. Because still gold is considered tier 1 asset in the global banking system. And that's the reason why Russia had started accumulating gold before attacking Ukraine. China has been accumulating gold. So that's where the whole gold standard was. And that's why also when US wanted to do more and more, print more and more dollars, they wanted more and more gold. And that is why I think it was the time of Nixon, right? We banned holding gold by American citizens. All the gold had to be deposited to the Federal Reserve so that then US can print more dollars. And because we needed to sponsor the wars. Anyway, so that was the second one. First was the commodity. Second one was gold. Third came a fiat currency, because I think in the Second World War, after Second World War, we realized that if we need to sponsor the war, we need to spend more. There are only two ways to spend more for a government. Either government raise money through taxes, or they print more money. But if we print more money, you need to have more gold. Just like example I was giving of India, they had to give a proof that they have more gold for the newly printed money to hold any value in the global banking system, right? So what started to happen is government started, even earlier, before we took US dollar off the gold system, what was that? So $35 were pegged to 1 ounce of gold. Anytime you could take your $35 to your bank and tell them, give me my gold back, because the dollar was pegged to a gold. But like I said, not everyone go to bank. So what government started to do, they started trading more and more paper money because they wanted to sponsor war than what the metal backing they had, right? So it means if more people go back to government or to the bank, say, I want to redeem my notes for a gold, the banks will default, government will default. So government started to create a paper money which is not backed by gold. But now the second question is, why would people hold it, right? Why would it is called fiat currency for a reason, because the only reason why it is still in circulation is government is forcing people to trade in that, and the people don't have any other recourse today. So, and why government forces us? Because that's the only way to pay taxes. So the earliest paper use was identified in China 1,000 years ago, because that's where the paper was invented. Fiat currency is interesting because unlike history of commodity money, it's a step down in terms of scarcity, which is where the wheel started to turn back. So far, the things over the centuries we considered as money were the one which were scarce to produce. But eventually now, because government is forcing and the fiat is so-called money, is not at all scarce to produce. It's just a piece of paper. And once again, long history is around why does government even do it? Because they need to sponsor all their expenses. It could be because of wars. It could be because of the measure that the government announced to continue to stay in power. Reason could be anything, but these fiat currencies over the a period of time have been debasing, right? And it's not just now that so inflation is nothing but debasing of our currency, and it has been happening even during the times of Romans, right? When Romans introduced their own coins and told everyone to use those coins. To start with, those coins were made of gold. But when government needed more coins because Roman wanted to sponsor war, they melted the coin, add some more cheaper material, right? So a king can collect 1,000 gold coin in taxes, and then they created more coins with only 90% gold, right? So now you have more than 1,000 coins. Later, again, they got all the gold coins, created more coins, and now you got 12,050 coins into the economy. Right? So this is nothing but devaluing of the gold coin. People still think of the coin as if it was original gold, but it is not gold. It lost. It's started to fill up with more and more of a filler metal. In making it in a paper becomes much easier, right? You don't have to collect all the metal. You don't need to melt the metal. You just need to print more paper, and which is what governments across the world are now doing. Of just devalue the currency if you want to sponsor your expenses. So throughout the 20th century, this trick of being able to devalue the currency and without people realizing, it spread like a virus. This is faster and more efficient way to devalue the currency than to actually debase the metal. The government doesn't have to collect the coins. Instead, everybody is holding the paper money that is trusted to be redeemable for a certain amount of gold, which we know it is not. And the government can break that trust. Nixon did it in 1970. Whenever we took it from that, we depegged it, suspend the redeemability, which today we can't take our dollar and go back to Fed government and say, okay, give me dollar or give me gold. Print a ton of money, which is government is doing now, and then repeg the money so that each unit of paper currency is redeemable for much smaller amount before people realize what is happening to their savings. It takes years, decades. These changes happen very slowly, can't be realized in one generation. But this is exactly what has happened. When we say dollar has lost its value, that is because of these realities. If we are held our savings in dollars, we would have lost 99% of its value in last 50 years. Ironically, the fact that fiat currencies have no cost to produce is the biggest cost it is exacting on its subjects. Right? Why? Because this allowed governments to fight much larger wars. So today, and if we go back and look at it, Vietnam War was a war. I mean, it cost US a lot. And I think that's the reason why we had to depeg it, because we didn't have enough gold to sponsor the war. And after that, across the world, wherever we have fiat currencies, more and more wars happening, because now it costs us nothing. It costs government nothing to sponsor a war. They don't have to raise taxes, because they have to raise taxes. They need to have that discussion. They don't have to raise taxes. They just devalue the currency. And unfortunately, we as a citizens have to pay the price, because gosh, I've been working my ass off on my job and have saved some money. Now that money is becoming less and less worth. Sovereign institutional reserves, and this became very apparent in 2020. Now, not only the central banks across the world, if you want to make sure your own currency has got some value in the rest of the market, you need to back it up with something which the rest of the world thinks that is valuable, right? Which used to be gold. And that is why out of 15 trillion USD equivalent of worth reserves, 2.5 trillion is in gold, in 12.5 trillion is held in dollars, euro, yen, and franc. Reason is rest of the world think dollar has still value, euro has a value. They don't hold their reserves in Zimbabwean or in Bolivar because nobody pays, put any value to Bolivar or to pesos or to rupees or to Bangladeshi taka or to ruble. So the sovereign bank hold their reserves in things that the rest of the world say it is valuable, and they'll be able to give you goods if they give those valuable stuff to them. India used to hold gold and some dollars. But what we never thought about until this year is majority of these reserves are permissioned assets, means dollars, euro, franc, etc. Except gold, everything is permissioned asset. Means you need to take a permission of someone else for your asset to be valuable, which world came to know as a shock when US and Europe decided that the Russia had a reserves, their European euro reserves and dollar reserves that Russia held arbitrarily. EU and US decided that they're not going to honor those. And then suddenly 20% of Russian GDP was kind of a so-called confiscated. There was a Wall Street article in March 2020 saying if Russian currency reserves, not Russian currency reserves, not gold, but the other reserves, euro, franc, euro and dollars, aren't really the money, the world is in for a shock. If I think Russia held around $200 billion of US dollars, and US government decided not to honor it anymore. So they can't buy anything of that. So that's where again the question started, what the heck is money? If the dollars that Russia held, if the euro that Russia held in the banks are suddenly overnight become worthless, what the hell is money? Where do you put the value? So far we thought dollars and euros were valuable. And going back to the same first stuff that we started with, currencies are not money, they are liability of other institution or other entity, and has got value as long as the other party will honor it. Beyond that, it's got no value. It's an IOU. It's an IOU note. That is currency. Money is something that has got intrinsically value in its own right. I don't need to take permission of anyone else to tell me that this is value zero. As long as everyone in the rest of enough people in the world is willing to consider that as having some value, that's money for me. Now I can build currency as a claim to that money. That's how the whole gold standard started in 1700s, was issuing paper claims that eventually become paper notes, bank notes. Right? But those notes are still a liability because of the party that is issuing it. Russia's gold is money, their foreign exchange reserves were currency, but I think they realized it way late. And the same is true for other countries. Fiat currency and government bonds have got no intrinsic value. Currency acts like money most of the time until one day it doesn't. And that day came in March 2022 for I would say for Russians, for the Russian citizens. We can talk about Putin is evil, but let's say Russian citizens who held their savings in dollars, who held their savings in euro, and they held it in foreign banks. That became zero for them, for none of their fault. None of their fault. It was the fault. It means there really wasn't money. that was tied to so many conditions that Putin will not become evil. US will not sanction us. Euro will not sanction us. And Russians were their lives to gather something that could be overnight turned as worthless. So huge distinction between money and currency. I know in US, we just don't find, we never had the need to do this, but the rest of the world is realizing that all these dollars and euros, etc., are not really money. They are the liabilities, they are the honor system, they are the IOU from one of the most stable governments in the world. But in the end of the day, it is still an IOU. I think that's a huge distinction between what the money is and what the currency is. Fourth type of money, which now being talked about, is internet native money systems, right? Now, throughout the history, if you go back, the way the commerce has changed, the speed at which the commerce has changed, money also has changed its forms. Right? When people were not moving around, we all were staying at the same village, didn't have to move around more than a mile or 2 miles. Livestock, cattle was served as a good, as a value, good as a money. When the Silk Road was opened, when the spice route was opened, people started to travel around. They couldn't carry their livestock, or they can't carry the bulk load of the produce. So the barter system didn't work out. So they started creating different forms of money, which were a little more transportable, right? Beads, you can still carry beads. You can still carry some gold. So some of those commodities took a shape of money because commerce has increased at a faster pace. People are not started transacting, they're traveling. Then third came in, wherein we got an invention of telegraph. Now, with the invention of telegraph, we could send messages along. Then the gold, you really you couldn't really use gold to transact to transport it at the same speed. So we started figure out, okay, what's that, something that we can do on, or rather we started building those paper claims. Now those paper claims also became a so-called digital updates to the money, which today we have, right? But now with internet, even these paper claims are too slow to move. It takes 3 days for ACH to settle. And in any case, the banks are the currency systems and not the money system. As we says Lynn Olden, yes, that's where I think I mentioned earlier. So she wrote a big article on what is money, and that's what I'm picking up some parts of it. Okay, read a link. Hold on. So let me put this link. All right, so coming back to this, when internet started, that some of the technologists, cyberpunk, they started to look at how the money would again, change the shape. How do we use something that we can settle the transaction, not just the transaction, but we should also be able to settle the exchange of valuable goods or exchange of something that we consider as a value at the speed of internet. Right? So a lot of work started to happen at that part of a time. Number two, we realized that over a period of years, governments have become more and more either authoritative or semi-authoritative. Right? So now you need something that if as a citizen, I need to work on, I can have something that government cannot confiscate or cannot nullify. Right? So the discovery of digital scarcity, so that's where essentially, the Bitcoin comes into picture is, it was founded in 2008. So before that, let's read a quote from a Nobel laureate economist says, I don't believe we shall ever have a good money again. before we take the thing out of the hands of the government, that is, we can't take them out violently. We can't fight against government. All we can do is by some sly roundabout way of introducing something else that government can't stop. Right? Once it moved to the fiat currencies, government now realized how they can enforce the fiat system of money, even it may not hold any value onto its subjects and citizens. Authoritative regimes can do it with much more force than the democratic one. But we realize in Canada, even the so-called good democratic government also enforced their own, people realized that government can confiscate. Even a Canadian government can stop you from transacting from transacting you with your own assets, with your own so-called money, because your bank accounts were just blocked by the government. So the answer came in 2008. I'm not going to go through the whole details, but my whole more concept is around the basic concepts of money and how the money has changed shapes. And it's not easy to understand. Right? So if the participants, so again, Bitcoin is a whole network. It will have value only when enough people around the world say, I want to place my value on this. And remember, going back to the things that will be valuable if they are durable, if they are scarce, if they can be transported, if they can be verified, if they cannot be produced at will, if it can be divisible, and does so-called Bitcoin, does it meet all those criteria? Yes. But it will have zero value if none of us wants to put our faith in it. Right? If it says it has got no value for us, then despite all those, it's of no value. Not right. So if the participants hold their own private keys, then these also represent assets that are not someone else's liability. So first time in the history of civilization, you could find something that is not a liability of someone else and could also be used not just as a store of value, but we could use it natively for transaction. So today, let's say gold is a store of value. For centuries, we use gold, but I can't transact natively on gold. Gold is not enough divisible for me to go and, let's say, do my groceries. Okay. Gold is not transportable enough for me to go and buy 100 million, what do you call it, a yacht, or 100 million of dollar worth of aircraft. Okay. But if Bitcoin becomes valuable, it has got the properties of being native money because it is not dependent on anyone else's liability. I mean, if you hold a private key, then you don't have to depend on any government. But also it could become currency because it holds all the values of a good currency, means that I should be able to transact with it. It should be able to transport it. As long as people realize that it has having value. Money is a social concept than anything else. All right, moving on. I think Fidelity published a paper called Bitcoin First, in which they mentioned why the rest of the 15,000 crypto assets may not be Bitcoin, etc., etc. Why? So what did it come up overnight? No, it took behind this tech, there's been a decades of technology work that has gone in. Foundations of internet been put in 1970 because so-called Bitcoin needs foundation, the internet to transact across the world. Concept of Merkle tree came in 1970s and early 80s. There's a tech used to create the whole blocks. Networking came in 1980s and 1990s, right? Proof of work was invented in 1990 by Adam Back, who is a CEO of Blockstream. So proof of work is nothing new. I mean, this was invented in 1990s for hash cash. SHA-256 encryption came in 2000s. So so-called Satoshi Nakamoto, he didn't create many things. He basically used all these things, put it together in a way with the right game theory to create a system in which you just can't create more of it whenever you want to. You can't confiscate or stop anyone from using it. You may try to stop them by putting other means, saying taxes, etc., making it illegal, but you can't stop anyone. Right? If you're holding gold and you're trying to move across the borders, gold can be physically confiscated, right? But not this. But all these technologies came together, and I think the situation was also right, wherein we describe here, we need a different set of money system. And money has changed its shape and form over centuries. We discussed a lot of it. So why not now? Could we be sitting on a cusp of changing the world order, wherein money could have a different form altogether? I'll skip this. This more talks about the lot of detractors talking about I can't use Bitcoin for buying a coffee, which is true, you can, but that's not the purpose of Bitcoin. There are other work that's happening on Bitcoin which will allow you to buy coffee. You can't use Bitcoin because that's not the purpose. It's a base layer. Let's like you can't use FedWire to buy coffee. We use Visa to buy coffee. But the Visa MasterCard is a liability of a bank. If a bank dishonors or Visa can cancel the transaction, your merchant doesn't get money. So in today's world, the final settlement happened at a FedWire. You know, when you and I transact, we are just transacting the IOU notes among our banks. But those banks go and eventually settle through the FedWire, and FedWire is not as fast as bank. FedWire does very fewer number of transactions, few thousand transactions. Each transaction is a huge amount of transactions, but they settle to it, in a day. So the whole idea of trying to compare Bitcoin with saying, oh, it's so slow, Visa is faster. Lynn said that's not correct, because its main utility is internet native and censorship resistant medium of exchange. It's not competing with Visa, it's competing with the FedWire. Like on a FedWire, we built another system of banking, wherein the Visa came in, wherein the online ACH transfers came in, which are still 3 days. It takes 3 days to do ACH transfer. We want it faster. We built another layer of PayPals and the Venmos, which will settle instantaneously. But that's still not settling of money. That's still settling of IOU notes among different participants. The settling of so-called fiat money happens at a FedWire, which still takes time. Right? So the base layer is not competing with Visa. It's competing with central bank settlements, right? So that's one kind of digital money. And then we see more concept was digital money, which is corporate stable coins. Once corporates realize that it is way faster to do the settlements, if I have on a blockchain, they started to issue their own so-called tokens. But these are still, you have to trust the custodian, you have to trust the corporate. It does serve a purpose for international settlements, but it serves a different purpose than censorship resistance, than your protection of your value against authoritative governments. But from a user perspective, if I want to transfer, $2 million at 2 a.m. using stable coin, I can do it in seconds. I don't have to wait for a wire transfer. I don't have to wait for ACH to settle, or wire transfer, to take a few hours. And now we are seeing many banks are actually doing the JP Morgan had its own JPM coin, which it uses to do an international bank settlement with many other banks. So this is already in progress. Many banks are actually started creating these tokens, which are claim against the dollars, but it are much quicker to settle across the across other banks. The third one, similar other flavor we're talking about is CBDCs. Like, why only companies? Now the governments and the federal government are thinking, why can't we do it? Why do we have to even have this paper dollars or go through the whole ACH system? If we can settle it much quicker, if blockchain can allow us to settle it much quicker, then let's work towards CBDCs. China is way ahead on it. A lot of central banks across the world are exploring this. US is exploring this. From a government perspective, they can send international payment without the SWIFT system, because SWIFT system can be weaponized. We did it in March 2020, right? You have a lot of non-banking people can get access to banks because now you're directly dealing with Fed, blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of other uses or misuses depending on how you think about it. Are you comfortable with your central bank knowing every transaction that you have made? Right? Cash is still anonymous. If I use cash, banks don't know where I spend that cash. If I use credit cards, bank can know where I spend my credit card. If you use CBDCs, central bank, your government will know where you spend either type of money. From my perspective, CBDCs are more and more draconian. It's the ultimate weapon in the hands of a government. If they don't like you, all your so-called value that you hold with your bank, they could just confiscate everything. Okay. Now, it's good or bad, depending on which side of the government you are. For some government, like it said somewhere, right? It's terrorists for one could be martyrs for another one. But having the fact that this could be having CBDCs in the hand of authoritarian governments is I would say the worst situation. But anyway, governments will try to figure out a ways in which they can continue to have a control on their citizens, because that's keep their power. And as a citizen, they will continue to fight to exercise their own freedom, I would say. By the way, the more and more digital we became, more and more we lost our privacy as well as so-called freedom as well. Final thoughts, and I think this is more important because this is exactly what we are going through in the world right now. When money changes in society, it always feels weird for the people who are going through it. Imagine someone who used shells for money their whole life, like few generations before us, and then due to interaction with foreign people who are coming from outside and selling you goods, shiny yellow metal, shiny gray metal circles with picture of faces on them, which is those metal coins that used to be in France. It's very scary for them. It's a different experience for them. And those foreigners are telling me, use these coins as a money. Shells are no longer money. And they started displacing the shells. Right? Imagine using gold and silver coins as your money for whole life. Let's say my great-grandparents. And then someone comes and tell me, oh, these coins, we don't put any value because they are too difficult to transport. Use this piece of paper that are backed by the gold instead of the gold itself. Right? And they made it illegal to actually own gold. This is what US government did. And they take away the peg to the gold, and you are still forced to keep that paper. It's difficult to do these transactions, these transitions. Eventually, we have been using these unbanked papers whole of our life as a money, And then someone comes and tell me that there is something called internet money that works by encryption algorithm that you don't understand, but it keeps increasing in users. Now we have 100 million users. Nobody can make more of it than what it is pre-programmed to do. Nobody can change the rules of the game. Everyone is playing with the same rules. It can be used for peer-to-peer or domestic transfers. It can be self-custodied, can be transferred more easily and more securely. It's difficult to understand because I've used paper money. Now you're telling me, something else is money, but that's happened over generations. And every generation that goes through it is always in dilemma. What am I supposed to do? First, we'll probably ignore it because the probability of any given new thing becoming money is low. It doesn't happen every decade. It doesn't happen even in one lifetime. It happens across generations. And when in the generational time when it happens, it messes up with our minds. So first we ignore it. But then if it continues to stay around, continues to jump back, then we need to research it. We should test it and find out the ways in which it could fail. It may fail, but if it keeps coming back, we better at least research it. Looking over the long run, it is clear that the money will become increasingly digital. The question is, will it be stateless peer-to-peer bearer assets like Bitcoin? Or will it be state-created CBDCs or state-regulated corporate stablecoins? We don't know. And to the extent they will coexist with each other, how much market share can we expect each one to take? We don't know. Whether Bitcoin succeeds or fails in the long run, whether it succeeds or not, but I think it is worth understanding this whole network rather than trying to ignore it. Sorry, it was really long read. It was, let me tell you, I think the original article is probably more than twice of this. I didn't even talk about petrodollar in this. So she spent a lot of time on talking about petrodollars. So I eliminated most of that. But I think for me, it was a good reading, trying to understand the whole concept. And maybe, and I'm not even saying it right, I don't know, but maybe this is one of those travelers coming from other countries and saying, hey, instead of a livestock, use these beads or use these gold coins as the money, because this is where the rest of the world is moving to. And if the rest of the world put more and more faith on the gold coins, then the whatever I'm considering as a money will no longer be money. I think that's a net I would say is the gist of this. Is it's not the first time that it is happening, but for a generation that is going through it, it's always a difficult situation. It's always messes up with something that I've held a firm belief over decades. Someone is coming and challenging that belief that the paper that I hold is not a money. It's just a currency. It's just a liability. And I guess Russians do understand that it's only liabilities. But I think us as a US citizen, we haven't gone through such shock. So we don't know. Some Canadians do understand that it is liability. Users in developing countries in which governments have confiscated or blocked them from using their banks, they do understand. But I think for us, it is in a developed country still worth to know that monies have changed shape. There is no reason why it may not change its shape again with the technological advancements that we have seen. Okay, that's all for this long read. Apologies if you didn't find it fascinating, but for me, I thought I will. For me, it was really eye-opening. I spent a portion of my long weekend going through this. So thought I wanted to share this. I see a couple of comments. Bob says, still can't imagine how Ben Franklin traveled from America to France and stayed for years. How could he carry enough money to do that? He might have just carried the promissory notes, IOUs. That's the claims on the real money. which works as long as it doesn't work. It's like me issuing a promissory note, and if me have enough honor or enough influence in the world, yeah, people will probably take my IOU notes and exchange it for something else that they value. But those IOU notes are good only as long as I decide to honor it. When I say people have used hundi, Hawala to honor the letter based on credit of the people and institution using it. Yes, it worked local, internationally. Now it is becoming digital or wire transfer. Traveler's check. Yeah. But again, all those traveler's checks were again liabilities of, traveler's check was liability of American Express. It wasn't instant settlement. Right? Hawala hundi eventually defaulted down to changing of a currency notes, which today we know currency notes is a liability of a central, is liability of the financial institution or of the federal bank. The true form of a value is where the rest, people are called the value too. Today, most of the people still put value behind US dollars, and that is why most of the central banks still hold US dollars as their exchange reserve. But this year, something happened which made a lot of government to think that it is only valuable as long as you are on the same side as of US government. That realization a lot of governments in the world had this year. Cool. So that's a long read on the history of money. If you are more interested in that, if you have a questions on, all right, I assume Bitcoin is money, but can it serve the dual purpose of currency? Can I buy coffee with it? What can I do with it? There's another article from Lynn Alden. I won't be getting into that because that's more very specifically focused on the Lightning Network and the advancements in that. Those are interested, you can go and look at the Lightning Network, which more talks about how on the same Bitcoin ecosystem, like on the currency, we got a Fedwire, we got a banking, we got a PayPal's, Venmos. You're also building those layered systems on the Bitcoin blockchain, where Bitcoin becomes the your Fedwire, the strongest settlement layer. Then you got a Lightning Network, or you got a Lightning. There's another one which is on a side chain. So there are a lot of work happening. Go and read for that if you're more interested in it. Cool. All right. Any questions on the concept of money? I mean, did it get you thinking on what we've been accumulating so far? Is money only because our government is saying it's money? And especially it happened in 2016 for me. Those who held some Indian currency would have realized overnight Indian government did a demonetization drive, wherein they told the currency notes that you're holding will be no longer be honored, so you have to exchange it for the new currency notes. I was in US. I lost all that value. Good part is I didn't have too much of a cash. I held only few currency notes. Now those are museum worthy because you can't exchange it, and government decided overnight saying those old notes will be considered illegal. You exchange it for the newly printed new notes, and over a certain period of a time, you had a window to exchange it with the new notes. I couldn't. And my little amount of a wealth that was stored in those so-called currency notes has become zero. And it happened in 2016, 2017, whenever that Indian government did a demonetization. So it does happen. So I realized, okay, these notes were really not of a value because no Indian government told, oh, sorry, these are worthless. You were not carried abroad. I didn't actually, I was not able to, I could carry it abroad because, hey, you can still transact. I can exchange it. There is no restrictions on carrying it abroad. If it is now restrictions, then it means it's not even transportable. Only thing is the day it was announced, I went to the Forex exchange here and they all refused, saying, sorry, no, we won't be exchanging it for US dollars. I kept a small amount with me because when I go back to, let's say, India, I don't have to worry about exchanging anything on the airport. So anyway, things do happen. So I realized that was the liability of another government. All right, let's talk about, by the way, carrying this abroad, we didn't realize, and I read in the Lynn Alden article today, through the Bank Secrecy Act, government had introduced that any transactions happening of more than $10,000, banks are supposed to report it. What I didn't know, and which I found in the article, that law was done in 1970s. When if you're transacting something in $10,000, you're doing really some big stuff. Now, government has devalued currency since then. Now the 10,000, now the equivalent amount would be $75,000. The government didn't change the laws. Now they're getting more and more visibility into what you're doing. A lot more and more of transactions are now being reported to government. Go figure. Ramesh says that was for controlling the black money and the fake money printed by another one. There are always two sides to the coin. People who are honest they also lost all their value. Now coming to the new standard, there is no concept of a fake money or black money, because no one actually can print a Bitcoin. No one actually can print gold. No one, if you print fake gold, you can determine that it's a fake gold. Or not print fake gold, you mine fake gold, you can determine it's fake gold. You can't even print Bitcoin, or you can't even create a Bitcoin. So yeah, strange things do happen. And unfortunately, in developing countries, that's why Venezuela is now banning people from holding US dollars, right? Because most of the people, they don't want to hold Venezuela Bolivar. They want to hold either gold or dollars. So they are banned from holding dollars, but people are still finding a ways. When it reaches to the extremes, people will find a way and put their faith on a different set of money. But it needs to go through that adoption cycle. All right, last topic for today, baby Berkshire, or maybe we should stop. It's 12:13, and I guess we should cover the baby Berkshire next week. My family is waiting. I mean, we are planning to go out for lunch because today is my birthday. So they're like, hey, we're gonna eat out for lunch. I'm like, okay, for sure. For a change, my birthday fell on a weekend, so we can go together as a family. Thank you. So I'll skip there, maybe answer some questions and have a lunch, family lunch. Any thoughts on NVIDIA GPU ban exports to China? It did show up in their, market did fall on a little bit on the NVIDIA stock fell on a little bit because of ban on export on China. But I don't know how big is that business is on NVIDIA. I'll have to find out if they break out their businesses in terms of their geographical regions or not. Looks like not too big. If you look at NVIDIA, probably not, it may not be too big. So, but I guess eventually between US and China, we will figure out a common ground. I don't think China being such a big economy, US can't survive without it. And right now, all this tussle between US and China, I guess it will take some time, but in the long run should be okay. Again, I don't know the number. So more than 7 billion came from China last year. How much was from bot partners versus end users? I need to dig to figure out, is there really an impact? But I didn't see, I heard about the news, but I didn't see around lot of people predicting that it'll have too much impact on Nvidia, and when is it actually getting into effect?